Hi everybody, this is John here. This is Paul, George,
and Ringo.
And we're very happy to be on your program once again.
Hello everyone and welcome to Beatles News Briefs, your home for all the news you need to know and the best views from the Beatle world. I'm your host, Steve Marinucci. Our contributing editor is Candy Leonard, author of the great book Beatleness. And my special guests today are Chip Madinger and Mark Easter. Chip and Mark are the co-authors of Eight Arms to Hold You, the pioneering reference about the Beatles' solo years. And Chip is the author of Lennonology, about the life and music of John Lennon. We'll talk to them in a little bit. But first, here's the news. In an interview to kick off the latest tour of the all-star band, Ringo Starr told writer Gary Graff in Billboard about the upcoming reissue of the Abbey Road album for its 50th anniversary. He said, "I loved all the re-releases because of the remastering, and you can hear the drums, which got dialed down in the old days," Starr says. "I got a bit fed up personally with all those like Take 9 or Take 3, the odd takes that we didn't put out, but that's part of the box set and you have to do stuff like that. But I've always just listened to the record itself, what we put out in the 60s or 1970, and it's brighter. It's amazing with Beatle music. We have 1 billion streams a year now, and every generation still has a listen to us far out." His comments are interesting, and he said in the past that he indicated that he didn't particularly care for putting out outtakes, and there he spells it out again. But at least he realizes that, it's something that the fans want. And I think Paul realizes that too. So that's interesting. He also told Graff about that his new album, which still doesn't have a title and still doesn't have a release date, is just about done. He said, "I am actually pretty far along." When we'll get an announcement of that is anybody's guess. I would assume that with words like that, we'll hear about it pretty soon, though. Meanwhile, Paul McCartney has reissued Linda McCartney's 1998 Wide Prairie album on limited edition white and blue colored vinyl and black vinyl, and also digitally through Amazon and iTunes. So it's available again if you're interested. Doesn't seem that they did a CD this time, which is kind of weird, but oh well. Anyway, in the latest chart news on the latest Billboard 200 dated August 3rd, the Beatles' One album is at 58, down from 50. Abbey Road is at 65, down from 60. And the White Album is at 177, down last week from 152. On the Artist 100, the Beatles are number 31, down from 24. And on the vinyl chart, Abbey Road is at number 4, down from number 2. And Sgt. Pepper has re-entered the chart at number 19. On the latest UK official charts Top 100 album chart, dated August 2nd, the Beatles' One sits at number 26, down from 23 last week, and 67 to 70 stays the same at number 89. On the vinyl chart, Sgt. Pepper is at 39, down from 21, and Abbey Road is one spot below it at number 40, down from number 33. Stay tuned next for our interview with Chip Madinger and Mark Easter. And we're back. Way back in 2000, Chip Madinger and Mark Easter published 8 Arms to Hold You, a really intense and detailed look at the life and times of the solo careers of the 4 Beatles. They've since updated 8 Arms in a newer digital version that they'll talk about in this interview. Chip has also published, since 8 Arms came out, the first part of Lennonology that expands the Lennon section in 8 Arms. And they will discuss both of them in this interview. Take it away. Okay, Steve Marinucci here with Chip Madinger and Mark Easter, the co-authors of 8 Arms to Hold You. And this is kind of a I don't know, is it a reunion or is it a scoop, or because do you guys get together very often?
We see each other a couple times a year. Mark lives about 90 minutes south, if even that.
Yeah, I think we see each other more. Yeah, but the internet makes the world smaller, so we communicate regularly.
Yep.
So.
Okay. Well, Eight Arms to Hold You has been a great resource for many, many years. Tell me how it came together, guys.
Well, probably more interest right now is the remastered version of Eight Arms to Hold You. We've kind of brought it into the 21st century here with an electronic version of the book because the hard copies are calling triple digits on the web, and we wanted to make it more available to folks. So we had another look at it, fixed some mistakes, and added about 20,000 new words, and took about 20,000 old words out, and have made it available electronically through the website, and the response has been great.
When you did the original version of the book, how difficult was it to assemble all that material? Because, I mean, I've talked with people who've done other books, and especially in the early days of the internet, which that one came out then, was it was pretty hard, was it not?
It was pretty much virgin territory.
Yeah.
It was the Wild West at that point. I mean, nobody had really attempted anything of that breadth. We were talking 100 years of recorded history when you look at the four of them as individuals. And, I've been collecting since I was a teen. Mark had been collecting since he was in Knickers. And we kind of took our paper recollections and notes and with our magazines and all the piles and piles of tapes and discs, and sorted it all out and basically wrote the book that I wanted that nobody else had written yet.
Yeah, because any time the solo Beatles careers have been covered before, like if you have a Paul McCartney bio or Lennon or whatever, you would find those years compacted into 25 pages at the end of the book, and they'd still be going over the same old Beatles stuff time after time. So that was a frustration, to say the least.
Did you run into any real roadblocks, or is that kind of a dumb question?
Not really. I mean, there were things that we could cover in greater detail than others, just because we were able to make some contacts in some places. But for example, we had some great contacts at the AFM in Los Angeles, and we're able to pull session sheets. Whereas since George did all of his recording primarily at home, after a point, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot for us to work with there. So, the only roadblocks were the amount of time. We were both working full-time jobs at the time, so this was a night and weekend project for us. And it was, do we keep adding and adding and adding to it, or do we wrap it up and put it out and say, here we are to a point?
And I think, too, we were also trying to figure out how we were going to distribute it, because, I think we had some discussion at that time. There was actually, a book publishing world, and, that would have perhaps wanted to publish it in a different version, different format than we wanted to. So we wanted complete control over it. So that decision was made early on that we're not going to try to shop this. This will be totally done by us. We will do all of the editing and, all of the production and the distribution, which obviously is a lot more work.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole different world. But as a result, you have complete control. So it's the book from top to bottom.
Did you get any help from any of the four principals? I mean, remotely, detached or whatever. But I mean, was there any cooperation from anybody?
No, we were trying to stay under the radar because of the experiences some other authors had had when they approached Apple and the individual estates. So we were trying to kind of fly low so that we could produce the book we wanted to produce. That's one reason why we don't have any pictures in that one. We weren't real familiar with the legalities of all of that, so we tried to keep our noses clean. And but to answer your question, no, it was all on our own.
Right, and we wanted it to be a critical guide. That's another part of the whole thing is that Chip's forte in terms of doing research and digging up all this great material, and then my part was far more of the writing element and fleshing it out. So, but we right from the get-go, we wanted it to be a critical guide, and when you start involving the principals in that, it sort of puts you in a mode of not wanting to be as critical if you're getting help from the estates or from
that's true. Let's go through kind of each one's career. I'm going to start with Ringo. I mean, Ringo's the one that probably everybody kind of figures, is the one that you go over with, get over with quickly. I mean, how was it more difficult actually there because of Ringo's lack of, I don't know, lack of being out there, if you get what I'm saying?
Well, one thing that really helped with the Ringo was the fact that a lot of his work was done in the U.S.
Right.
So we were able to make more of an effort to make contacts here in the States as opposed to a bunch of cold calls to the UK at 3 o'clock in the morning. So that was helpful because of the amount of work he did here. And we were able to give every project from any of the four of them a decent enough amount of coverage. And Ringo had some really neat stuff, say from the Bokus of Blues, because we got in with the Nashville Federation for Musicians, and some of the New York session guys were happy to talk with us. And then he did, his everything since '89 with him has been the All-Star Band.
Right.
So there were tons of audience tapes to go through, which I will never do again. But no, we think Ringo got some pretty good coverage. Out of any of them, I think George probably got the least, just because of the behind the gates of Friar Park.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you for that using what you just said there, has the McCartney career become so utterly complicated? I mean, look, he just now made Bruce McMouse and that Professor Longhair album available again.
Right.
I mean, he seems like he's doing everything he can to put everything out there that he can before it's too late. It almost seems like an obsession, kind of.
If we'd have had that available when we were putting the book together, we certainly would have included it, and it would have made things a lot easier for us. But I've since learned that, maybe necessarily, Paul, everything in your books, just because it says so on paper, doesn't pass the acid test. There are things that I've learned in researching the Lennonology books and going through all the Lennon sessions, of the whole recording process. And just because there's a date on a tape or a date on an acetate doesn't mean exactly that's the day when it happened. That's the day when that physical piece of media was produced. But I think it's great that Paul's finally getting this stuff out. Yeah, he's dusting things off and getting them out, maybe a little too late, but it's great to have them.
Yep. I just happened to look online today on Amazon, and I saw Amazon. I don't know whether this is means anything, but their prime price for Paul is Live was very high, and it just so happened that last night I was in a bookstore and I found a used copy of Unplugged for like $3, which Yeah, I mean, that we're talking Paul's Unplugged, and that's not one you find around very often, and you almost have to wonder if maybe something's going on there, with those.
Yeah, those are two of the ones that are coming out in June on vinyl. That are being
Mhm.
reissued on vinyl. So the others, Wings Over America and the Amoeba concert.
Oh, really? Now there's a bootleg floating around of much more than was released. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah, the whole concert's available.
Hmm.
Uh, but no, I think this is just going to be a ratio of the 12-inch that came out at the
That's
time
Amoeba's Secret. Yeah.
Right, right,
Yeah.
that
right.
have a half dozen songs on it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of a future do you see for Ringo and Paul as far as their solo careers go?
Um,
I think it's a live future in terms of they'll
live
live
performances.
performances. That's
Hmm.
that's their future for as long as they can do it. I think unfortunately Paul's voice has just suffered beyond belief
Right.
the last 5 years, and doing 3-hour shows with no water and uh, whatever else is going on is it's really butchered his voice, which is just
Hmm.
sad. But
What'd you think of Egypt Station?
uh, I appreciate the fact that he's trying to you know do new things and broaden his perspective or whatever, but it was one of those I listened to it twice and filed it. So I'm
Hmm.
but a lot of it is because his voice is just gone. He doesn't have the range, even close to the range that he had even, 10, 15 years ago. Even albums like Memory Almost Full, it's like I thought it was suffering then. And you know, so really, as far as Paul's recorded career goes, for me, it ended with Chaos and Creation. I felt like
Hmm.
that was the last truly brilliant piece of work from someone who just, probably recording wise should have stopped after that point in terms of being able to have a decent singing voice. And the songs just aren't there either anymore. So,
Hmm.
I think
And
the
yeah,
choice of producer has a lot to do with it.
yeah.
With Nigel on.
Yeah, Nigel Godrich, which just, he the reason that Paul can't deal with that record now is because it wasn't a particularly pleasant recording experience for him because he wasn't 100% in charge of it.
And there
But
was the Heather factor at that
right,
time
right,
too.
sure. So it was sort of a band on the run kind of situation at the time in terms of it was not the best of times, and as a result, it was a great piece of work. His voice was still in top form, and it. But yeah, for me, that's where Paul's recording career kind of ended because everything since then has suffered in terms of both the songwriting and with his vocal performances. So.
hmm
Mark,
we go ahead.
I
Go
was
ahead,
going to
Jeff.
say we were just reminiscing the other day that it's now been 25 years since we had the fortune of meeting Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you meet him?
It was when Linda was doing her press conferences for her TV dinner line.
Okay.
So he was traveling along with her, and she did 4 press conferences, and we wrangled our way in somehow.
Yeah, just one here in St. Louis. Yep. And that was
Yeah.
probably to our benefit because it was here in St. Louis, the press coverage was pretty minimal. I'd say there were maybe 50 people there,
Yeah.
tops.
And it was Linda's
Yeah, it was Linda's
centered
deal.
and
Yeah. But he came out and halfway through and did his his PR Paul routine, and
Hmm.
then at the end of it, he was extremely charming and friendly and said, "Hey, does anybody want anything signed?" And of course, we came well in hand with
Yep.
that.
Sure.
But it was a great, you're always in that mode of, do you want to meet the people who you have admired over the years? And that was the perfect way to meet the guy because he was in his PR mode very warm, very friendly, made personal comments about all the things that we brought to sign. It was intimate, but it was, so we were very fortunate. But yeah, that was 25 years ago next month that happened here in St. Louis. So,
Wow.
yeah, but time goes by,
Mm-hmm.
Anthology was in the works at that point,
Yeah.
so, so that was, a golden time. But anyway, so yeah, here we are at the end of it. But Ringo, who'd have thought Ringo would have the best voice of them all?
I know that you
look the best.
Well, I have to say I'm glad that Paul finally let his gray show through.
Yes.
That was for those of us that have gray hair. I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Now the mullet.
Really. George, and there's been little from the archives of John and definitely George. And that, especially George, it's kind of really disappointing that the Harrison family hasn't done more with his stuff. I don't know where to go with that question, because it is such a disappointment.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like there's any encouragement or any move on their part to do anything, and I don't understand that. Do you?
Well, I think George was the difficult Beatle when he was alive, and he is in the afterlife as well, because his estate is
reflecting what he wants to do.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, his whole thing, at least in the last major interview he did, the one with Timothy White in Billboard in '99, it seemed like he was starting to get to a point where he wanted to do archival stuff, and he put, the getting his solo catalog in gear, and having bonus tracks, and then maybe having a box set of unreleased stuff. So he sort of was in that mode at that time. But I think, the subsequent events, the end of that year, and then obviously everything that happened after that, I don't know. I think there was just kind of a souring at that point, and yeah, his son has his own musical career.
Yeah, they've got their own
interest. He's wanting to put that forward, and I think he would be the linchpin to anything being done at this point.
Right.
So, and there's no market. I mean, I think they actually think that they're still supposed to make a lot of money from archival releases at this point. And the fact of the matter is that ship has sailed. If they wanted to do that, that ended 10 years ago. So in terms of being able to get actual big time sales from box sets being issued. So I think they were disappointed by the sales figures for both the Dark Horse and those Apple boxes. And, kind of were like, well, if people weren't going to buy that, why would they, buy a 4 CD box set of his stuff that never came out? So it's sad.
But all things must pass. It is 50 next year.
Yeah. And
I wouldn't be surprised if we see a remix of it.
Yeah, of some kind, now that we're down that pike.
Right.
We've now seen remixes of the White Album and Sgt. Pepper, and we've seen this Imagine set, and and these archive releases from Paul. I think that's a fair possibility.
And the rumor mill has that Abbey Road will be in that pile someday.
Yeah.
Someday soon. So
hard to imagine what they could do. It's sort of like with the White Album one. I mean, I don't know that they necessarily, there was no improvement from that one. And I'd have to say the same with Abbey Road. I'd love to hear outtakes and, in terms of alternate takes and, rough stuff.
And then, of course, supposedly, or we'll get Let It Be too, now finally. And I assume that will be an album thing too, besides the movie.
Yeah. It'll be a gigantic project. So.
Yeah.
In 2020.
Right. Let's talk a little bit, Chip. You and I, you found that George Harrison document that led to the story that was published this week in Billboard let's talk about that. How did you happen to find that? You kind of told me how it happened when we were discussing the story, but go through the details of how that happened.
Well, I was cleaning up my hard drive and getting things in better organized here at home, and found the George file from the Freedom of Information Act that I submitted on John, and I got George's at the same time. I finally decided to take a look through the George's, and it's lots of stuff about him not being able to come into the country in 1970, and all the hoops they had to go through there, and how the Sullivan estate didn't want the Beatles to be able to come into the U.S. because of their drug records. And
really,
yeah,
that's a new one. I don't recall hearing that before.
They were going to be on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I think they were using that as a reason to be able to get John and George into the country. Then they pulled the plug on that, and then the Sullivan people rescinded their letters, requesting that they be allowed into the U.S. But
wow.
What was that? What year or what?
My memories kind of all jumbled. Yep. I'll pull out the paperwork and have a look.
I said that was after the breakup?
No.
Oh, it was before the breakup.
No, it was to promote Let It Be.
Yeah, it was the.
Okay.
Remember the show? I guess it was in April of '70. That they did a Beatles theme Sullivan show. Well, that was what that was for.
Oh, so, I see. Okay.
And they'd both been busted by that time. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so I'm going through this George file and all this, and then all of a sudden there's this telex to the White House, where George is kind of busting Nixon's chops about getting him thrown out of the country. So there was that document, and there was some supporting paperwork talking about how George had gotten into the country at that point and why he wasn't being given permission to stay any longer. And, it was just all bundled up with all of these other papers, and I thought it'd be something cool for people to see. So I threw it up on the Londonology Facebook page, and here we are.
Right. And I mean, what's interesting was, what was the kicker was the fact that he wrote to Nixon and complained. I mean, that's really almost the kind of thing that John did. Well, it is the kind of thing that John did in England, but John never, to my knowledge, John never wrote to any. John never did any public writing like that. I mean, I've
not come across any documents that John's written to a president.
I would think his lawyers would have put the kibosh on that.
Yeah, I'm sure they would have. I'm going through, because I did talk to Leon Wiles when his book came out, and basically they kept that whole thing to the, you're right. He stayed within a narrow path somewhat to fight that thing, and successfully. But and as I mentioned in the article, Harrison told Lennon later it was because of Lennon's what they called the Lennon doctrine that Harrison was allowed to, that whole thing was fixed for Harrison. So that was really kind of crazy that there was a parallel between the two there.
Mm-hmm.
So well, anyway, thank you. That was great that we were to do something with that. I'm glad we were. So
thank you.
Are you guys working on any projects now? I know Lennonology is in you've got the first volume, and where are you with that, Chip?
At this point, the Lennonology project's all on my own, so I'm the one to blame for it not coming out, just because there is absolutely so much information, and I'm still not sure of the proper way to present it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I've been writing, and I've been putting things together, and have some proposed formats, and once I decide on one, then it might just be a case of filling in the blanks. But at this point, there's no release date set. I think the next book will be all about it's either going to be about all the home recordings or all of the recording sessions.
Okay.
Just because there's such a wealth of material there.
Okay. Mark, are you working on anything?
Working toward retirement. That's about
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not really working on. I do a lot of work with in terms of editing and sort of editorial supervision, I guess you could say, for my friend Andrew Sandoval.
I know Andrew well. Yes.
Yeah. So if you look in any projects that Andrew works on, whether they're Kinks, Monkeys, et cetera, you'll see my name there under, some sort of thanks or editorial supervision, like the Monkeys Blu-ray box. That was something I worked on quite a bit. So whenever Andrew has something going on, he uses my services in that regard. So.
Let me ask you a Monkeys question then, because just a general Monkeys question, because of the way they have come around, and obviously everything that's happened personally and professionally to them in the last year. Mm-hmm. I see some kind of a turning. I think turning in their behalf. I hope, and I mean by good things. I'm seeing good things for them. Yeah. I hope I'm right. Because and one of the things I'm obviously talking about, and maybe I'm being really wishful, is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I think is so sad that they're not in there. But the music their music, I think, has gotten a lot more respect. And I'm talking about the past music. I'm not necessarily talking about the recent music. I think the music's getting a lot more respect. I think, and it's unfortunate that the recent passing of Peter Tork will give him a lot more respect, because I don't think I think he was overlooked by a lot of people, not necessarily Monkees fans, but I think by the public. And I think at some point something's going to happen there. And with Michael winding his career down, I think something's gonna happen. I really hope so, for their sake.
I say as long as Jan Wenner is alive, they will not be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He really has a bee in his bonnet about them. He truly hates them, and that is the main reason why it's not going to happen in his lifetime. So
I've actually talked to all of them at various points. And Peter definitely mentioned Jan Wenner. I think Michael did too. Mm-hmm. When I talked to him. I think Mickey did too. I'm not remembering certainly, but I for sure. But I'm pretty certain that they all did. And that's really. But he doesn't. Does he still have does he still have connection with that?
Sure.
He had dropped that, but
he's still on the selection and voting. Of course, that's changed a lot in the last few years. That that process, but they'll never be on the ballot. But that's just the way it goes. We'll see.
That's such a shame.
Yeah,
such a shame. What without giving away secrets, because I know you can't. I mean, what was the best project of the Monkees that you worked on?
I would say the Blu-ray box was really special.
Mm-hmm.
That being able to be a part of that, and them going back for the first time to the being able to get the negatives, to go back to the 35 millimeter elements and truly do the job they did with that stuff. and getting, the outtakes and getting it, that was a major box, and I was really thrilled to be a part of that.
Did you work on the King set too?
Yeah, Village Green.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That was another important set. I think, in my mind, that was the best box set of last year. It was, that really had some truly amazing
The Imagine
material.
box.
Well, the Imagine box was cool, but in terms of if you weren't looking at Beatles material, that Kinks, taking all that out, the Kinks box I think was truly, Andrew did some amazing work on that in terms of what he turned up and the mixing and how it was presented. So that was last year was a pretty banner year for box sets. But, but that Kinks set was particularly good.
It was. Well,
but the books have opened a lot of doors to work on projects that aren't necessarily Beatles projects. I mean, we got the Family Way reissue out there and done properly. All of the Howard Smith interviews are out there, and from the back to the source elements.
And Chip worked on the Lennon NYC documentary and the Plastic Ono Band classic albums. Chip did work on those as well. So that's that none of that would have happened without Eight Arms to Hold You and Lennonology being issued. So
when are we going to see live in New York City?
I thought they were working on it.
They've been saying. I think Jack Douglas has dropped hints that it is being worked on. I hope so. I mean, that I can't believe that that's not out there now.
Well, we thought it was going to come out for the 75th, what would have been John's 75th birthday, but fortunately, Lennonology is what came out for John's 75th birthday. Yoko held back just because she knew she couldn't compete.
That's right.
And but Jack Douglas had really nothing to do with the original one-to-one concert. The person that really was involved, who has since passed, was the film producer Steve Gebhardt, and we talked at length about what went into that. And I think he said at one point that they shot so much film that if Jesus Christ had walked into the arena, they wouldn't have been able to capture it.
Oh my God. No pun intended.
No,
exactly.
Anyway, gentlemen, thank you very much. This has been fun. Is there anything you wanted to plug or anything you wanted to say before we?
Just the remastered Eight Arms, and is available electronically, and the first volume of Lennonology, Strange Days Indeed, are both available at lennonology.com. And I've still got a couple hardbacks left, but other than that, it's paper for everyone.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time. And we'll be right back with a look back in history and what's out there in digital streaming. So don't go away. And we're back with a look back in history. On August 2nd, 1963, Sweets for My Sweet by the Searchers hit #1 in the UK. On August 3rd, 1963, the Beatles played their final show at the Cavern. On August 3rd, 1971, Paul McCartney announced his new group Wings that would have himself, Denny Laine, Linda McCartney, and Denny Seiwell. On August 5th, 1966, the Beatles released Revolver in the UK, and then 3 days later, the album was released in the US. Happy birthday to a couple of members of the Dave Clark Five. August 1st was Denny Payton's birthday, and August 5th was Rick Huxley's birthday. Some of the albums released during this time in history: August 2nd, 1965, Sonny and Cher's Look at Us. August 2nd, 1971, The Mothers of Invention at Fillmore East, and it should be noted that John and Yoko appeared with the Mothers during that gig, though they did not appear on that album. August 3rd, 1969, Creedence Clearwater Revival's Green River album was released. August 5th, 1966, as we just said, the Beatles' Revolver album was released in the UK. August 5th, 1967, Pink Floyd's The Piper at the Gates of Dawn was released. August 6th, 1965, The Beatles' Help was released in the UK. And August 7th, 1970, The Moody Blues' A Question of Balance was released. And here's some of what's streaming digitally out there that you can watch. Good Old Frida is on Hulu. Nowhere Boy is on Netflix. The U.S. vs. John Lennon is available free with ads on Vudu, Tubi, and Pluto TV. 8 Days a Week, The Touring Years is on Hulu. Looking for Lennon is on Amazon Prime. Above Us Only Sky is on Netflix. George Harrison, Living in the Material World is on Netflix and free with ads on Tubi. And Lennon Naked is on BritBox. The Last Waltz, with an appearance by Ringo, is on Amazon Prime. And Candy, which also stars Ringo, is free with ads on Tubi. Strange Fruit, The Beatles on Apple Records, is free with ads on Tubi. The Beatles 1 is on Amazon Prime. And Caveman, with Ringo and Barbara Bach, is free with ads on Vudu. That's it for now. You can catch our shows on fab4radio.com, Beatlesorama, and also on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please join our Beatles News and Information group on Facebook for the latest in the Beatles world, and check out our That's What I Want Beatles store page on Facebook, where you can find gift ideas for yourself or your favorite people, and where you can find links for both Candy Leonard's Beatleness book and my Meet a Monkey Davy Jones ebook. And also look for our next show, and please, please, please subscribe, and please rate us on iTunes. It helps get our visibility a little higher, and we would appreciate hearing your comments, seeing your comments, reading your comments. How about that? Anyway, till next time, we'll be looking for you out there. This is Steve Marinucci saying,
"Be seeing you."
Keep that one. Mark it fab.
One thing left to say. We'll see you next time.